Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The Fiction Room. Today's writing prompt comes from username Gelette. The prompt is, one day, time just suddenly stops for a short moment for you. At first, you tried to mess around, but after the 246th time that it happened, you start to realize that your power is not stopping time, but being able to move in time frozen by another person in the world. Our first story today is written by Chasing Mist. My sneakers tapped gently against the pavement as I walked briskly down the street. I squeezed my way through the peak hour human traffic, catching whiffs of overly strong perfume and, worse, overly strong body odor. I don't like people much. I mean that in the nicest way possible. Two's company, three's a crowd, anything more than that is a nightmare. Trying to ignore the occasional sweaty body that rubbed too close against mine as I wormed through the crowd, I wished that everyone would just stop moving. And then, all of a sudden, they did. The sounds of shoes pattering against the pavement and car horns blaring as frustrated drivers crawled through standstill traffic disappeared into thin air, as if they had never been there. A perfect, fragile silence descended upon the world. Every single person, object, and animal was frozen. The fat man in a shirt clearly too small for him had stopped, his pudgy leg stretched out mid-stride. A teenage girl with highlights in her hair swept aside her fringe with one hand, the other raised in mid-air in an attempt to adjust her earphones. A flock of pigeons hung artificially in the air, like some sort of elaborate piece of abstract art dangling from the ceiling of a museum. Yet even as the world froze around me, I continued moving. In that heartbeat, when everything else was locked in time, my left foot landed solidly on the ground, and unconsciously my right foot had moved forward, about to take another step. Then I stopped. Nothing compelled me to. Not like some things seemed to compel everything and everyone else to stop. No. I just stood there, in shock and awe. Had my wish caused this to happen? What was going on? And yet, even as my thoughts became a jumbled mess, I couldn't help but smile. Moving around was so much easier with everyone stopped in place. As it turns out, no, I wasn't the one who caused that to happen. Time abruptly resumed a short while later, as if nothing at all had transpired. By then, I was out of the crowd, tucked away in the corner of a quiet cafe. I only noticed when the barista started to move again, the sound of beans being crushed in a grinder giving me the shock of my life. The freezes happened over and over again, at random intervals. They never lasted very long, but I definitely wasn't the one doing it. In fact, as the phenomenon occurred more and more, I knew for sure that someone else was stopping time. There's no good way to explain it, but I could feel their presence somewhere, not too close but not too far away. I didn't know if they could sense me too, the way I could sense them, but I knew that they were out there. So far, I hadn't seen anything or anyone else move during these freezes. It may sound stupid now, but I was content to enjoy these little moments while they lasted. It usually wasn't inconvenient, and it led to some really cool opportunities to prank my friends, or to escape from throngs of people in a busy mall. I knew that my partner in crime was out there, but I had no desire to find them. In hindsight, that was a mistake. My sneakers tapped gently against the pavement as I walked briskly through the street. It was a day much like the one when I had first experienced the peculiar sensation of being the only sentient person in a world of frozen time. Once again, I squeezed through peak hour human traffic. Once again, my senses were bombarded by a host of things I hated dealing with. And once again, not unlike many of the other times, I quietly wished that my time-stopping partner might decide to freeze time once more, to allow me to slip out from this nightmare. Surprisingly enough, time stopped. It wasn't often that time stopped at a convenient juncture, so I took the opportunity to dash out of the sticky situation, literally, that I had found myself enclosed in. And yet, as I took in a gulp of fresh air, something felt wrong. It took me a moment to realize what it was. I was having trouble sensing the time stopper. It wasn't like the first time, when I just wasn't aware of them. No. It was as if they were fading away, like the dying flame of a candle, about to wink out of existence. Belatedly, I wondered what would happen to me if they vanished while the world was frozen. We always think of the important things just a little too late. I felt that pulse from the time stopper growing weaker and weaker, slowly dissipating like a fine dust floating into the atmosphere. I prayed that time would resume, that everything would go back to normal. And yet, that perfect, fragile silence remained intact. Every single person, object, and animal was still frozen. The random passers-by were all stuck in time, locked in place, halfway through their last action before the world had decided to stop. A flock of crows hung artificially in the air, like some sort of elaborate piece of abstract art dangling from the ceiling of a museum. I screamed, my voice ricocheting and echoing off the tall buildings that surrounded me. But no response came. Our second and last story of this episode is written by Tajun J. "Next!" shouted Lugia. 3 rows of chairs sat before him, each holding a potential recruit into their league. He could tell at a glance what a few of the powers before him were. The man on fire and the woman floating 2 inches above her chair were gimmies. A few of the others, like the woman with the glowing eyes and the man with the power armor, would be interesting to find out, but most of the candidates looked like perfectly normal people. One of the inconspicuous ones stepped forward next. Unlike the others, he had a frown on his face. "Your name, sir?" Lugia inquired. "My name? I'm Bill," the man responded. "And what will be your superhero name?" Lugia continued, with a flair for the dramatic. He had always been something of a performer, and gaining powers had given him the perfect opportunity to overact, as he had always desired. "I don't have one," was the response. "Look, can I—" he began, before Lugia cut him off. "No name? Then we will have the honor of naming you. Tell us, good sir, what is your power?" Lugia had loved naming new capes ever since he screwed up his own choice so badly. "Every time that guy stops time," he began, pointing at Destiny, "my time stops as well. It's become a serious issue, all right?" Lugia looked over at Destiny, who had a puzzled look on his face. A moment later, both Destiny and Bill had changed their standing positions. Destiny looked intrigued, but Bill's annoyed look had only strengthened, if possible. "Amazing!" cried Lugia. The possibilities of this were endless. "Can you copy the powers of anyone else?" "Well, I'm not on fire, so I'm guessing no," replied Bill, looking wearily at his neighbor in the crowd. Well, it's not the strongest power in existence, but we could certainly find a use for it," Lugia mused. "What? No, I have no interest in using it. I would just like some warning when it's about to happen. The 6th time it happened, the bike I was pedaling on stopped, throwing me over the handlebars. I was bruised for weeks. Imagine if I had been driving or taking a train. I'd be dead. By the way, fire your secretary. She called me a crank when I phoned her up. I had to walk over here to get an audience. Thanks for listening to The Fiction Room. If you like what you heard, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. It really does help us. But for now, stay safe out there, everyone. See you next time.